Hey, shalom, shalom from your Dutch Uncle John, here to tell you what it is from Kyrgyzstan still. And today, we had such good response for the God Math 137. We're going to do more God Math. And we'll just show you a lot of the different things that God has incorporated in His Word. He is the ultimate mathematician. Math has a lot of God-like qualities. One, math is always true. 2 plus 2 equals 4. It was before, it's now, it's in the future. It is eternal, that truth. Okay? And math is true everywhere. Whether you're in Kyrgyzstan or in Texas or in Timbuktu, math is true everywhere. It's omnipresent. Math cannot be corrupted or beaten, right? There are the statistics. Math is math. You can't argue this math, okay? It's powerful. It's omnipotent. And math is logical. It has language characteristics. There's symbols that help communicate. So with math, there's a personal relationship. All of these, eternal, omnipresent, omnipotent, personal, these are all qualities of God. Okay? So math is an expression of the mind of God. And if you look through the Bible, it's unbelievable all the types of math and math topics that are incorporated. You've got, of course, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. You have counting. It represents fractions. It's used for measurement. In geometry, he talks about circles, triangles, squares. There are trapezoids. There are rhombuses, cubes, spheres. And when you get into higher math, there's examples I'm going to show you today. Algebra, geometry. There's symmetry. He has pi hidden everywhere. He's got it hidden as a fraction, 22 over 7. He's got it hidden as a decimal, 3.1415. He's got the natural logarithm, e. He's got the Pythagorean Theorem I've shown you in past videos. He has estimation. There are math topics all through the Bible. Okay, and numbers. By the way, the Hebrew word for number is mishpar. And we can see an example of it here in Job 14:5. Here it says, since his days are determined, the number of his months is with you, and his limits you have set so that he cannot pass. This is the number of years that man gets to live, and God has set the number of months. But the word number is in the Bible. And in the New Testament, arithmos is the Greek word for number. And we see in Revelation 13:18, here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. So the word number is in the Bible. All right? So let's go ahead and let's just get started. I'll give you some examples of each of what we just talked about here. Let's start with 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5. It says, for this very reason, make every effort to add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. For if you possess these qualities and continue to grow in them, they will keep you from being ineffective and unproductive in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. But whoever lacks these traits is nearsighted to the point of blindness, having forgotten that he has been cleansed from his past sins. Notice, to your faith, he has you adding 7, there's no coincidence, 7 different things: virtue, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, brotherly kindness, and love. So we have addition. In Matthew 6:33, it says, "But seek first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." More addition. Here's a nice one in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 41. This is when Peter's preaching, and the Holy Spirit is sent on this day, right? This is Pentecost, is the name that the Christians call it. It's also Shavuot, is what the Jews call it, although they have a different reference for that day. But in Acts 2:41, it says, "So then those who had received his word were baptized, and that day were added about 3,000 souls." So he's adding numbers. And there's estimation, because here it says about 3,000 souls. And by the way, we call, like I say, we call it Pentecost. The Jews celebrate the same day. It's 50 days after Passover. It's 50 days after Yeshua is crucified. 50 days after Passover, when they left Egypt. Moses is coming down off the mountain with the tablets, the law, the 10 commandments. And when he gets down there, they're worshiping a golden calf. And Exodus 32:28, "So the sons of Levi did as Moses instructed, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day." So you have a subtraction of 3,000 people. Those who were worshiping the golden calf, Moses instructed the people to kill those people. And again, estimation, about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. It happened on the same day, thousands of years apart. And notice, when the Spirit was given, 3,000 were saved. When the law was given, 3,000 died. It's showing you that the law, if you think you're going to heaven because you keep the law, no. It's the law brings death. The Spirit brings life. Beautiful picture. And so there we've got addition and subtraction. And I like this one. Judges 7, starting in verse 2. This is a great example of subtraction. And I'm not going to read it all. It's a lot to read here. Should I tell you the story? This is when Gideon, okay, they're about to go to battle with Midian. Okay? And Gideon musters all the Israelis to come together, all the Jews, to fight against Midian. Let's read it. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands. For Israel will become boastful, saying, 'My own power has delivered me.'" Gideon gathered all these troops together, and God said, "Gideon, you have too many. If this many go fight against Gideon and Israel wins, Israel will think Israel was responsible for the win. You got to send some home." Verse 3, "Now therefore come, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, 'Whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead.' So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained." So this tells me there were 32,000 who showed up for the battle. God said, "You got too many." Gideon said, "Whoever wants to go home, go home." 22,000 left. There's 10,000 remaining. Then Yahweh said to Gideon, "The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them there for you. Therefore it shall be that he of whom I say to you, 'This one shall go with you,' he shall go with you. But every one of whom I say, 'This one shall not go with you,' he shall not go." So he brought the people down to the water, and Yahweh said to Gideon, "You shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink. Now, the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people kneeled to drink water. And Yahweh said to Gideon, I will deliver you with 300 men who lapped, and who will give the Midianites into your hands, so that all the people, other people go, each man to his home. All right, so what happened? He got, 10,000 people he's got to distinguish. And those who went down to the water, some of them put their face down in the water and was drinking. And others kept their head up, and they would scoop water up with their hand and bring it up to their mouth and drink. And those that brought the water up to their mouth, their heads are up. They are alert. They're noticing their surroundings. They're aware. And only 300 drank this way. Everybody else put their head in the water to drink. And God wanted those who were alert. So he sent home 9,700 who had their face in the water drinking. And only 300 were left. And it's a great story, Judges chapter 7. You can read it. But those 300 defeated the Midianite armies. Wonderful story. And you can only but give God credit for this win. How incredible is our God. All right. Here's a cool one. Deuteronomy 6:4. This is an example of multiplication that God has. This is the Shema. We've covered this a million times. Shema Israel, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. In this verse, there's some addition going on because he says Echad, that's one. And notice it says, Shema Israel, listen Israel, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. He has his name there 3 times. Yahweh, Yahweh. Eloheinu, our God. Yahweh, his name. One. Echad. Interesting there. This is that whole complex unity, right? There's one God in 3 persons. And if you put the gematria in for this verse, you can see each of the letters or each of the words, they add up. The total verse adds up to 1,118. And what is this verse saying? That God is one. That you can tell, there's 2 words you can boil it down to. Elohim, Echad. God, one. There's one God. And Echad adds up to Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, Dalet is 4, adds up to 13. Elohim, Aleph is 1, Lamed 30, Hey is 5, Yod is 10, Mem is 40, adds up to 86. Here's a good multiplication that God has hidden here. 13 times 86 is 1118. It's the same as the entire Shema. Very nice. Other examples of multiplication. 2 Kings 4, starting in verse 2. This is Elisha said to her, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house? And she said, your maidservant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil. Then he said, go borrow vessels at large for yourself from all of your neighbors, even empty vessels, and do not get a few. And you shall go in and shut the door behind you with your sons, and pour out into all of these vessels, and you shall set aside what is full. So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, and they were bringing the vessels to her, and she poured. And when the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is not one vessel more. And the oil stopped. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, go, sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons can live on the rest. So here he has the woman didn't have anything except a little jar of oil, and he multiplied that oil over and over and over, so they had enough to sell and live on. There's multiplication. Another example of multiplication is Matthew 13, verse 8. And this is the parable of the sower. Remember, the man went out and sowed seeds, and some fell on the rocks and the birds ate, and some fell in the weeds, grew up around them and smothered them, and some fell in shallow soil, and they sprouted and grew up quick, and then there just wasn't enough dirt to take root, and they died quickly. But verse 8 says, and some seeds fell on the good soil and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. So here you have multiplication. Right, nice. By the way, have you ever noticed, and this is odd, because when you're giving an example, you know, listen, if you invest in my company, I'm going to return 10%, 20%, 50%. You start low, you might get 10 or 20 or 50, and you increase bigger. In this verse, it doesn't do that. It says, some fell on good soil and yielded a crop 100 times, some 60, some 30. It goes from big to small to smallest. Well, that's odd. Yes? Yes, it's odd. All right. Well, look at, and I always wonder, why did it go from big to small? But you know what? When God chose Abraham, that's one person, that seed fell on good soil, and it did yield a crop. And Abraham, in verse 5 of Genesis 21, it says, now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And then Genesis 25:26 says, afterward his brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Yaakov, Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Well, that's interesting. Abraham's 100 when he had Isaac. Isaac is 60 when he had Esau and Jacob. And then in Genesis 41, verse 46, it says this is Jacob's son, and Joseph was 30 years old when he stood up before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So Joseph is elevated to number 2 in all of Egypt, and he's given Asenath, the Egyptian woman, as a bride, and they have the 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. But it's kind of interesting that they give these ages from that one seed planted Abraham, 100, then 60, then 30. Could be it can tie in, not sure, but it's pretty much there. Matthew, first book in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament. Matthew 14, starting in verse 17. This is where Jesus is giving this sermon, and the field is covered, the hillside is covered with people, and it's starting to get late. And Jesus said, we need to send them home so they can eat. And but Jesus said, wait, we got to feed them. And they said to Jesus, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, bring them here to me. And ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food, and breaking the loaves, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. And there were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. There's multiplication. You take 5 loaves, 5, hey! Remember, every Hebrew letter has a meaning. Hey is 5. Revelation, blessing, something big is coming. Not a surprise that there were 5 loaves, okay? And he multiplied them. Very nice. And there were 12 baskets left over. I think this is showing the 12 apostles. Look, we can feed everybody, and provide for you 12 as well. And you can now take your baskets and multiply them. In Matthew 18, starting in verse 21, then Peter came and said to Yeshua, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Again, multiplication. And wow, you got to forgive 70 times 7. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Let's go back to Genesis 1:1. Remember, every Hebrew letter has numbers. Each word adds up with a gematria value. And here are the gematria values of the 7 words. That whole verse adds up to 2,701, which is 37 times 73. There's a nice picture of symmetry that God has. You'll see lots of symmetry here. Okay? And 37, remember 3, God is one God, 3 persons, and 7 is his perfection, his completion. Okay? So 3, 7, 7, 3. Very nice. If you take the total of 2701 and add to it its reflection, there's symmetry. 2701 plus 1072 adds up to 3773. Very nice. And you know, if you multiply 2701 times its reflection, you get 2,895,472. Take those digits, 2 plus 8 plus 9 plus 5 plus 4 plus 7 plus 2, it adds up to 37. This verse is a cornucopia of 37s. Also, if you take the product of multiplying 2701 times its reflection and take the 2 million, put the 2 out front, and then the 895,000 plus 472, it comes out to 1369, which is 37 squared. So I think he understands exponents. Second power. Okay, as for division, we see division early on in the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, starting in verse 3. And God said, let there be light. Be light. And was light. Verse 4. And God saw that the light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness, the choshek, he called Lila. And there was Erev, and there was Boker, one day. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it divided the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and divided the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was Erev, and there was Boker, a second day. So on day 1, he divided the light from the darkness. And on day 2, the earth was covered with water, and he divided those waters and put a firmament, an expanse in between, this air pocket. So now you have water up above, you have water down below, and an air pocket in between. So he's got division on day 1 and on day 2. More examples in the Torah of division. Exodus 21, verse 35. If one man's ox hurts another's so that it dies, then they shall sell the live ox and divide its price equally. Also, they shall divide the dead ox. So division, way back in the Torah here, Exodus. In the book of Numbers 31, verse 27, he says, and divide the plunder into 2 parts. between those who took part in the war, who went out to battle, and all the congregation. So when you go to battle against your enemy, the spoils are to be divided by those who fought and all those who in the congregation. In Joshua chapter 18 verse 5, it talks about the dividing of land, and they shall divide it, the land, into 7 portions. Yehudah shall stay in its territory on the south, and the house of Joseph shall stay in the territory on the north. Division, division, division. In the New Testament, Mark is the second book in the Brit Hadashah, chapter 3, verse 24. It says, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but he is finished. A house divided cannot stand. At the Last Supper, this is the Passover Seder, right? Yeshua is having with his apostles the night before he's crucified. Luke chapter 22, verse 17. Then Yeshua took the cup and gave thanks and said, take this and divide it amongst yourselves. Division there. In Matthew 27:35, and when they had crucified him, they divided up his garments among themselves by casting lots. More division. And this one, by the way, this one is a fulfillment of a huge prophecy from back in Psalm 22. You know, Psalm 22, this is the one David wrote that begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? David says in Psalm 22, they have pierced my hands and feet. David says in Psalm 22, they divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. All of these are fulfilled when Yeshua is crucified. Unbelievable fulfillment there. Whew. Have a drink on that one. Coca-Cola today with ice. And by the way, just for the record, you know, in the Old Testament, there's all these laws, 613 laws. You know, one of the laws is that the high priest may not tear his garment. And remember, when they arrest Jesus and they bring him before Caiaphas, and Caiaphas says, I put you under oath. Are you the Messiah? Are you the Christ? Are you the Son of God? And Yeshua answers, you know, yes, it's as you say. And soon you will see the Son of Man coming, riding on a cloud, right? And only one person rides on a cloud, and that's Yahweh. And when Yeshua said that, he's claiming to be Yahweh. And Caiaphas, he goes ballistic. Do we need to hear any more? And he tears his garment, indicating that Caiaphas is no longer the high priest. There's now an opening for high priest. And when Yeshua is hanging on the cross, they are dividing his garments. And they come to one garment that is continually sewn without seams. And if they tear it, it would ruin it. So they can't divide it into 4 pieces. So they're going to gamble for it to see who gets it. And by Yeshua's garment not being torn, it's indicating that he now is the high priest. And the high priest is the one who does the sacrifice. It's very cool. Yeshua is not only the high priest, he's also the sacrifice. He's the one who allowed every part of that crucifixion to occur. He could have stopped it just like that, but he didn't. Okay, Hebrews 4:12. It says, for the word of God is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword, penetrating even as far as the division of soul and spirit, and of joints and marrows, and able to judge the thoughts and intentions of the heart. More division. Okay, so we've seen addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. We also see God can count big. In Numbers chapter 1, verse 45, so all the numbered men of the sons of Israel by their father's household, from 20 years old and upward, whoever was able to go out to war in Israel, even all the numbered men were 603,550. Big number. They counted them up. 2 Chronicles 2, starting in verse 1. Now Solomon proposed to build a house for the name of Yahweh and a royal palace for himself. So he conscripted 70,000 porters, 80,000 stone cutters in the mountains, and 3,600 supervisors. Big numbers, counting big. Psalm 147:4 says, he counts the number of the stars and calls them all by name. There are billions of stars in a universe, and there are trillions of universes, and there are billions of trillions and billions and trillions of stars, and he counts the number of these, and he calls them all by name. Beautiful. Luke 2, chapter 1. Now in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census should be taken of the whole empire. More counting. Adding them up. Luke 12:7, it says, but even the hairs of your head all have been numbered. And fear not, you are more valuable than many sparrows. God knows the number of hairs on our heads. Revelation 9:16. This might be the biggest number in the Bible. I think it could be. It says, and the number of mounted troops was 200 million. I heard their number. This is, remember there's going to be 200 million man army coming from the kings of the east to invade Israel. It says they're going to cross the Euphrates River, the dried up Euphrates River. I don't think the Euphrates has ever been dried up. It's one of the 4 rivers that come out of the Garden of Eden. And let me just say 2 things about this. This is a little rabbit trail we'll go down. I know you like these. One, the Euphrates has never dried up. But Turkey now has built dams in eastern Turkey. And at any time, they can turn the switch and shut that river off. And so the Euphrates River bed can now be dried for a 200 million man army to come across. Nice. Nice how that prophecy can now come true. It hasn't yet, but it can now. God could also dry it up just by whatever, however he does it. But this is a man-made way. And the other thing is, this 200 million man army is coming from the kings of the East. Well, this is interesting because obviously the one that comes to mind would be China. They could muster a 200 million man army. And you know, back in the 1970s, China had a policy that they instituted of one child only. And a lot of families, you know, the wife gets pregnant and they're looking for a boy and they want to have a boy, and then a girl comes out. And they're a little disappointed. So you know what, they would just kill the girl. They would kill the baby and try again and hope for a boy. And this was happening over and over and over again. And when they could do ultrasound and they could tell the sex of the child, they would abort the child if it was going to be a girl because they wanted boys. And because they did this policy for 30 years, China has this huge surplus of now fighting aged men, and there's not enough women for them, there's not enough jobs for them, And they're all flocking to the big cities looking for work and looking for a wife, but there's none to be had. And they formed into gangs and groups and mobs, and it's become a problem for China. And what's China going to do with this 140 million man surplus? And by the way, the prophecy says from the kings of the East. So it's not just China who's going to contribute to this big army that's going to come to fight in Israel and lose, by the way. You know how we know they're going to lose? This is a rabbit trail on a rabbit trail. Because in their number, they have 20. What does that have to do with anything? You know, God is 3. We talked about that. 1 God, 3 persons. And 7 is his perfection. 3 times 7 is 21. 21 is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful God number. When he said, Eya, Ashur, Eya, I am. Those Eya adds up to 21. This is God's name. When Moses said, what are they going to ask? What do I call you? Eya, I am. Adds up to 21. Beautiful, perfect number. And 20 is a little bit short of 21. And 20 represents lacking. And any time in the Bible you see 20, okay, the Jews are going to go against this group, and this group has 20,000, they're going to lose. Why? Because they have 20 in their number. It's a multiple of 20. Okay? And this group that's coming from the kings of the East has 200 million. That's divisible by 20. They're going to lose. They're lacking. Okay, let's get back to where we're talking about. Fractions. God has fractions and decimals in his word. Look at Genesis 14, verse 20. This is when Abraham meets with Melchizedek. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave a tenth of all. Abraham gave a tenth of everything he had to Melchizedek. A tenth, that's a fraction. That's a decimal. Leviticus 27:32. And concerning the tithe of the herd or the flock, or whatever passes under the rod, the 10th one shall be holy to the Lord. Again, fractions. Revelation 9:15, it says, so the 4 angels who had been prepared for this hour and day and month and year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. 1/3. Fraction. God uses numbers for measurement and math for measurement. Genesis 6:15. He's telling Noah how to build the ark. This is how you shall make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its breadth, 50 cubits. And its height, 30 cubits. Proverbs 11:1 says, dishonest scales are an abomination to Yahweh, but an accurate weight is his delight. How beautiful is that? Don't be cheating on your scales and weighing. You understand? Accurate scale, accurate weight is his delight. Revelation 21, verse 16. It says the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. And the city lies 4 square, and its length the same as also the width. And he measured the city with the reed at 12,000 stadia. And the length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. The New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven. And it talks about that the city lies 4 square. So God in geometry knows what a square is. All right? And uses it in his Holy Scripture. And remember that in the tabernacle, this is the mobile house of God, right? When they were in the wilderness. You walked in, there's the brazen altar, then there was the laver, and the laver was round all about, so it was circular. Then you went into the tabernacle, and the tabernacle had the holy place, where the menorah and the showbread and the altar of incense. Then there was a veil, And then you had the Holy of Holies. And that inner sanctum, that's where the Ark of the Covenant resided, and the mercy seat on top of it. And the Holy of Holies was 10 by 10 by 10. And when David proposed building a temple in Jerusalem, a permanent structure for God, and Solomon actually built it, they built it on the same model. And here the Holy of Holies was 20 by 20 by 20. So that's a cube. So God knows what cubes are, and he incorporated those in his scriptures. And by the way, if you take a cube and open it up, you get the cross, which has 6 faces. A cube has 12 edges. A cube has 8 vertices or corners. A cube has a total of 26 parts. And Yahweh, Yud, He, Vav, He. Yud is 10, He is 5, Vav is 6, He is 5. Yahweh, Jehovah, Yud, He, Vav, He adds up to 26. Very beautiful. Okay, well, we've shown you before that 2701 is the total of Genesis 1:1. And just so you know, how do the Jews write these big numbers like this? Well, we showed you the gematria. The first 10 letters, the gematria values are 1 through 10. Then they jump 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Then 200, 300, and Tav, the last Hebrew letter, is 400. Then you have the final forms. A final Kaf is 500. A final Mem is 600. A final Nun is 700. A final Pei is 800. And a final Tzadi is 900. And then you go back to Aleph, which they call Eleph, represents 1,000. And you put the Aleph with an apostrophe after it, and that represents 1,000. And then you put a Bet with an apostrophe, and there's 2,000. And a Gimel with an apostrophe is 3,000. So now you can get into big numbers, and you can represent them with the Hebrew letters. So here, if I want to represent 2,701, Bet apostrophe is 2,000. 700 I would write as Tav Shin. Tav is 400, Shin is 300. There's your 700. And then an Aleph on the end is 1. So sometimes you will see in Hebrew writing, you're not going to see this in the Bible with the apostrophe after big numbers, but just I want you to make you aware that the Jews do use letters to represent big numbers. And that's how you would write 2,701. By the way, 2,701 is a perfect triangle number, okay, that has 73 rows, and the bottom row has 73 dots across. So he understands equilateral triangles and incorporates those in his first verse. And by the way, you know, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. John 1:1 is the other verse in the Bible that begins, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John 1:1 is written in Greek, and Greek also has a system of letters for numbers. It's called isosophy. And John 1:1 adds up to 3,627, right? Which is 13 times 3 times 3 times 31. Here again, we've got our 1s and our 3s. Remember, one God, 3 persons. And John 1:1 does not add up to a perfect triangle. John 1:1, though, does add up to a perfect trapezoid. Well, that's kind of interesting. And I will tell you that the top row of this trapezoid has 74 dots across, which is convenient because the Genesis 1:1 triangle, its bottom row has 73 dots. So the John 1:1 trapezoid fits perfectly under the Genesis 1:1 triangle. It's showing you that in the beginning, those two verses that start in the beginning, they are related. And together they add up to 6328, which is divisible by 7, 904 times. And if we take this verse, I do want to point out this one word here at the end, which actually shows up 3 times. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. That word in Greek is logos. It's a gematria is 30, 73, 70, and 20. The word logos adds up to 373. Very nice. There's your 3s and 7s. And what's really cool is look at the first part of this line, first sentence. And it said, and God was. That phrase, and God was, also adds up to 373. It's showing, and God was, Word. And Jesus, Yeshua, He is the Word. He's the Word of God made flesh. The Word incarnate. He came to earth. Yeshua is God. He's the second position in that, the complex unity. Now, that word logos, word, this is where we get the word logic comes from, okay? And we said God is very logical. Math is very logical. We mentioned this at the beginning of the talk. And here's a very simple logical concept. I think they call it the transitive property. If B equals C and C equals A, then B equals A. That makes sense, right? Okay. Here's an example. If Yeshua is the light, well, he claimed in John 8:12, I am the light of the world. And if the light is good, well, Genesis 1:4, and God saw the light was good. Then Yeshua is good. And we see in Mark 10, verse 18, somebody comes to Jesus and calls him good rabbi. And Yeshua answers, why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. Well, use your logic here. If no one is good except God alone, and we know that Yeshua is good, then Yeshua is God. Very nice. Okay, let's get into this a little bit higher math. How about some algebra? And here we have a function of x and y. I've made a little equation here, 37x plus 6y. And let's plug this into, let's look at Genesis 1:1 again. Here are the values of each of the 7 words, okay? And we'll just park this up in the corner, so just keep reminding of what each word adds up to. And watch this. We have an x and a y axis. We have the Cartesian coordinate system here. If I graph the point where x is 25 and y is -2, so let's plug that in. 37 times 25 is 925, plus 6 times -2, that becomes -12. So you have 925 minus 12 equals 913. I can generate Bereshit from this equation, the value of Bereshit. And here I graphed it on the chart, and we put that up in the corner, in the left corner, just so you know that that value gives you the Bereshit. To get bara, I will put x is 5 and y is 3. We can graph it on our chart, and 37 times 5 plus 6 times 3, that's 185 plus 18 equals 203. Very nice. If I want to get 86, well, x is 2 and y is 2. 37 times 2 is 74, plus 6 times 2 is 12. This will generate 86. And we graph it, and we put the 2 and 2 up in the left. If I want to generate 401 et, it's x is 11, and y is negative 1. So this comes out to be 37 times 11 is 407, and 6 times negative 1 is just minus 6. So 407 minus 6 is 401. You see what we're doing here. Hashemayim, x is 11, y is negative 2. There you can graph it, and you plug those in and work out the math. You get 395. Va'et, 37, x is 11, y is 0. 37 times 11 is 407 plus 0, 407. And ha'aretz, x is 8, y is 0. 37 times 8 is 296, plus 6 times 0 is 0. And how beautiful that one equation can generate all of these without having to plug in fractions or decimals or they're all nice, pretty whole numbers that create create these results. By the way, if I take all 7 combinations, right, x and y's, and let's just add up all the x's. 25 plus 5 plus 2 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 8, all of those add up to 73. All of the y's, negative 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus negative 1 plus negative 2 plus 0 equals 0. And you can plug those x and y's into our equation. And when you do, 37 times 73 is 2701, plus 6 times 0 is 0. So you have 2701. How nice. God knows algebra. And he wrote a verse that can show you that he knows algebra. For measurement, we talked a little bit about measurement earlier with the scales and with the Noah's Ark. But look at this one. In Ezekiel 40, verse 5, it says, "And behold, there was a wall on the outside of the temple all around. And in the man's hand was a measuring rod of 6 cubits." Okay, this word around is sabab. It's spelled samek bet bet. And it means to go around or encircle. It's interesting that begins with a samek because the letter samek is a round letter. Very clever. Here's some other examples. 1 Chronicles 14:14. David inquired again of God, and God said to him, "You shall not go up after them. Circle around behind them and come at them in the front of the balsam trees." Revelation 4:4, "Around the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white garments with golden crowns on their heads." So this word around, he's indicating that he understands circles, okay? The first time we see this word is in Genesis 2:11. And by the way, the letter samek is not found at all in Creator Week. So nowhere in Genesis chapter 1 will you find a samek. It's the only letter that's not in Genesis chapter 1. And the first 3 verses of chapter 2, that's day 7. And there is no samek in the first 3 verses of chapter 2. The first time we see a samek in the whole Bible is Genesis 2:11, and he's talking about the Garden of Eden, and that there are 4 rivers that flowed out of the garden. And the name of the first is Pishon, and it flows around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. That word around is sabab. And there is your samek, your round letter, in the word around. Very clever. And by the way, in Genesis chapter 1, we've said that there's no samek. So he doesn't use 22 letters. He uses a little bit short, less than 22. And he does talk about the 7 days of creation. Right? Perfect. Chapter 2, here's chapter 2 written in Hebrew, small. Chapter 2, he does use all 22 letters. But in chapter 2, he kind of retells about creation, but he doesn't enumerate the 7 days. And he does include a samek in chapter 2. So, watch this. In the first telling of creation, chapter 1, he uses less than 22 over 7 days. Well, you know, 22 over 7 is a very close approximation of pi. Pi is that it's the circumference of a circle divided by the diameter. And 22 over 7, although it's a close approximation, it's not exact. You cannot make an exact with fraction. It's an irrational number. But 22 over 7 is a little bit big for pi. You actually need something a little bit less than 22 over 7 will get you a more accurate number. And here we have less than 22 over 7, which is kind of the approximation of pi. And then creation day, or creation telling, the second creation telling, he does use 22, but he doesn't use the 7 days. And 22 over not 7 will give you also in a close approximation. So it's just interesting. I think he understands fractions. I don't think. He understands fractions, okay? And he's kind of hidden pi fractionally in the 2 tellings of creation, Creator Week. Very nice. Okay, we've told you this a million times, that Genesis 1:1 adds up to 2701, which is, of course, 37 times 73. Well, let's look at 37 times 73. This is just amazing, because, you know, my first video that I did long ago was Jesus in Genesis 1:1. The last I saw, it's over 800,000 views. If I had to do it over, I wouldn't say Jesus in Genesis 1:1. I would say Yeshua in Genesis 1:1. And if I had to do it over, I wouldn't have that green statue of whoever that green statue is. A lot of people assume it's Jesus. And again, we're not followers of Jesus. We're followers of Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah. So forgive me for having that green statue in that video. Okay, but the point of the video is that it is showing that the Son of God is destroyed with his hand on the cross in the first word, Bereshit, right? And so I want to show you again a picture of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, in Genesis 1:1. And we know Genesis 1:1, as we said, adds up to 2701, which is 37 times 73. I'm going to write that out, 37 times 73. I'm going to write it out in Hebrew. Shaloshim v'shabah pa'amim shabim v'shalosh. That's how you say 30 and 7 times 70 and 3. That's how the Jews would say it. All right. And you know a lot of this by now. Shaloshim. Shalosh is 3. Put an im on the end. That's threes, 30. Va-shabah. Va is and. Shabbat. The Shabbat is the 7th day. Shabbat is 7. Pa'amim is the Hebrew word for times. Shabim, that's the plural. It's Shabbat with an im on the end. It's sevens. Va-shalosh, and 3. Okay? I'm going to put the gematria values of each of those letters. When I put all the gematrias in each word, okay, Shaloshim is 686, Vashabah is 378, Pa'amim 240, Shabim 422, Vashalosh 642. The whole sentence, the whole math equation adds up to 2,368. Well, you know, Yeshua HaMashiach in Greek is Iusus Christos. And we told you that Greek also has isopsephy, where each letter represents a number. Here's the Greek alphabet, and here's their isopsephy values. And if I plug in Iusus, and plug in all the things, and I plug in Christos, Iusos adds up to 888, and Christos adds up to 1480. Jesus Christ adds up to 2,368. Beautiful. Beautiful! Drink into that one. So there's another picture of Jesus Christ in Genesis 1:1. I just want to look at this for a while. Let's just look at it for a while. I can't take it all in. The stuff he has hidden in Genesis 1:1 just never ends. Okay, here are the gematria values of the Hebrew alphabet. We told you, right, 1 through 10 end up by 10s up to 90, and 100, 200, 300 up to 900. And then Aleph with an apostrophe is 1,000, Aleph, and Bet with apostrophe is 2,000. If we take the reciprocals of each of those, a reciprocal is just 1 over whatever the value. Okay, so Aleph, the reciprocal of Aleph is 1 over Aleph, 1 over 1. The reciprocal of Bet is 1 over Bet, 1 over 2 is 0.5, a half. Reciprocal of Gimel is 1 over Gimel, 1 over 3 is 0.33333. I'm going to do that to all of these. We're going to start with Aleph, and we're going to go down to Bet, from father to son. But not Aleph to the second Bet, but to the 2,000 value Bet. And I'm going to put the reciprocals of each of those and turn them into decimals. And then I'm going to add all those decimals together, and I get 3.1416, which is a very close approximation of pi. Here's another place where he's hidden pi, the reciprocals of all the gematria values from Aleph to Bet. Ha! Very cool. Okay, Genesis 1:1 adds up to 2701, which is 37 times 73. Let's take all of the values of each of the words. Okay, Bereshit is 913, Bara 203, times Elohim 86, times Et 401, times Hashemayim 395, times Va'et 407, times Haaretz 296. I multiply them all together, I get 3,304, what is this here? Hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions, quintillions? I don't know what that is. 304 quintillion, 153 trillion, 525 billion, 784 million, 175,760. If I add all those digits together, I get 73. Not surprising. Pow! 73. And let's just take each group. And this is not anything different. I'm just doing the same thing, but we're going to do something different with these, right? 304. 3 plus 0 plus 4 is 7. 1 and 5 and 3 is 9. 5 and 2 and 5 is 12. You see what I'm doing? Okay, the whole way across. And they have 73. That's not surprising. Now I'm going to do it again. That new line of totals. Well, 7 comes down as 7. 9 comes down as 9. 12 will come down as 1 plus 2. 19 is 1 plus 9. 13 is 1 plus 3. 4. 13 is 1 plus 3, 4. If I add up that new row of results, I got 37. Ha ha ha! Kerplunk! I love it! And again, if you multiply the 37 times the 73, you get the 2701. Zap! Ha ha! Okay, now we've talked about pi. In Genesis 1:1, well, I've covered this a couple times, so we're going to cover it fast here. But you put in all the values of the words and of all the letters. Okay, in Genesis 1:1, there are 28 letters. And the product of the letters is I'm going to multiply 90 times 200 times 1 times 5 times 400 times 1, all those together, and I get 23 bazillion, trillion, zillion. Okay, it's a huge number. That's the product, multiplying them all together. The number of words in Genesis 1:1 is 7, and the product of the words is this 304 quintillion, 153 trillion. We just talked about that number a second ago. Okay, and then I'm going to plug it into a little formula. Number of letters times product of letters divided by number of words times product of words. When I plug those numbers in, 28 times 23 bazillion, trillion, zillion, okay, and divide by number of words times product of words, 7 times 304 quintillion. All that math comes down to 3.1415 estimated times 10 to the 17th. But it's correct there to 5 significant digits. It's pi times 10 to the 17th. How clever that God has hidden pi in Genesis 1:1. And we said that there's another verse that begins in the beginning, and that's John 1:1. And if you do the same formula to John 1:1 using the isopsephy numbers, the number of letters is 52. The product of the letters is 8 billion, trillion, zillion, trillion, zillion. I don't even know. It's just so big. Okay. The number of words, or 17 words in this verse. The product of the words is 949 illions. Okay. And plug it into the same formula, and it comes out to 2.7183 estimated times 10 to the 40th power. And my math friends, my higher math friends, 2.7183, and it continues on and on and on, never ends. That is the natural logarithm, e times 10 to the 40th power. This is an eternal constant. Pi and e, every mathematician on the planet, these are the two big, eternal constant that irrational, never ends, never repeats, pi and e. And there he has it in the two verses that begin in the beginning. By the way, this is just a real quick lesson of one application of e, the natural logarithm, and that is if you invest $1 at 100% return for 1 year, good luck getting 100% return in 1 year. But let's just, for the sake of argument here, this is the formula you use to calculate how much you will get returned. So you take $1 plus 1 over x, and x is the number of times in that year that interest is added. If they're going to add the interest once at the end of the year, so it would be $1 plus 1 over 1 raised to the first power. All right? 1 plus 1 over 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Raised to the first power is $2. That's how much interest, that's how much you get back. You get your dollar back, plus you get an extra dollar interest. If you're doing some compound interest where they're going to pay you halfway through the year interest, and then that interest stays in, and so not only is your dollar earning interest for the second half of the year, but the interest from the first half of the year is also earning interest. So they're going to calculate interest twice. So it's 1 plus 1 over 2, that's 1.5 squared, gives you 225. Notice, if they give you interest twice a year, you made an extra 25 cents because you're getting interest on your interest. If you do it interest 3 times a year, you end up with 1 plus 1/3 cubed, which is $2.37 cents. You made a couple more cents on that. If they calculate interest 4 times a year, it comes out to be $2.44 return. You notice the more times they calculate the interest throughout the year, the more you're getting returned. So you might say, you know what? I want them to calculate interest 365 times a year. Every day of the year, calculate. And so I get interest on that interest, on that interest, on that interest, and it accumulates. Unfortunately, it doesn't go on where you can make too much more money on this, okay? In fact, if they calculate interest an infinite number of times, they're recalculating every nanosecond, okay? Even less than that. They're calculating the interest an infinite number of times. You plug it into the formula, 1 plus 1 over infinity raised to the infinity, and it comes out to be 2.7182813. Okay, this is that e, the natural logarithm. Okay? So that's one example of e. It's like pi. It goes on forever and ever. It never repeats. It never ends. Okay? And this is one application of e, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about there. Okay? Very nice. And you know, and there's a very complicated formula called Euler's formula. And if you, this is extremely high level math, but if you take the natural logarithm and raise it to pi I is the imaginary number. It's the square root of -1. So e to the pi I plus 1 equals 0. You know, God here has taken the 5 most important famous numbers in the world, and he's connected them all together in one formula, which a mathematician named Euler figured out. Okay, geometric shapes. Here's a Star of David, which I get a lot of people writing to me saying, this is the Star of Rephaim or something, I don't know. And this is a pagan symbol, and it, you know what? God has this Star of David. Mathematically, it shows up all through the Bible. It is not a satanic, pagan thing. It's not. It's not. Where's my stick? Where's my stick? I don't know where my stick is. Oh, here it is. It's not. This God uses this with, look in my Joseph talk. Look in Math 137 talk. It is everywhere, and it just so beautiful. God is using, this is his symbol for his people, for his nation, the Star of David. Okay? So stop writing to me and telling me it's a bad symbol. It's not. Anyway, here's another example of how beautiful it is. Let's take every intersection and number them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Ah, there are 12. Well, how beautiful. 12 intersections, and there are 12 tribes of Israel. Another example of how it fits so beautifully. Okay? And you know what? If we take line number 1, there on the left-hand side, line number 1, the intersection points add up to, or 3, 4, 8, and 11. which add up to 26. Here's another line on the left-hand side there, the red one. The intersection points are 7, 8, 2, and 9, which add up to 26. Line number 3, 11, 2, 1, and 12 add up to 26. Line number 4 is the brown, 9, 1, 6, and 10 add up to 26. Line number 5, hey, is the black, 12, 6, 5, and 3 add up to 26. The orange, the 6th above line, is 10, 5, 4, and 7 add up to 26. Well, that's pretty amazing. And remember, 26, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Yud is 10, Hey is 5, Vav is 6, Hey is 5. Yahweh adds up to 26. He's really tied his name into this Star of David. Okay, here's a rhombus. The rhombus is the intersecting points are the four corners are 3, 8, 9, and 6 out of the 26. Here's another rhombus. 7, 2, 12, and 5 are the angles, and they add up to 26. Here's another rhombus. 4, 11, 1, and 10, 26. Here's a big triangle. 3, 11, and 12 add up to 26. Here's another upside down triangle. 7, 9, and 10 add up to 26. Here's a hexagon in the center. Adds up to 4, 8, 2, 1, 6, and 5 add up to 26. Everything about this Star of David adds up to 26. I think God is approving of the Star of David. Yahweh adds up to 26. Okay, here's our alphabet. You know, we're talking about three. God is there's one God, and he has this complex unity, this threeness about him. And so if we look at the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, is the Gimel. Gimel is a word, and you can spell Gimel, and it's Gimel, Mem, Lamed. Gimel is 3, Mem is 40, Lamed is 30. The word Gimel adds up to 73. How nice is that? Remember, the other big number he uses is Zayin, 7. And the word Zayin is a word. And it's spelled Zayin, Yod, Yod, Nun. And Zayin, the 7th letter, adds up to 77. Zayin is 7, Yod is 10, Yod is 10, Nun is 50. Okay, what else we got? You know what? I think this is a good place to wind it up. And let me tell you, for those of you who say there is no God, I want to leave you with these two verses. Because I'm telling you, God, he has incorporated himself into everything. Every leaf, every stone, every fiber of our being, every number, every letter, everything. And Psalm 14:1 says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, their acts are vile, and there is no one who does good." And if you missed it there, look at Psalm 53:1, because he says, "The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, their ways are vile, and there is no one who does good." He repeats it, and he says it other places as well. So do not be a fool. Do not be a fool. All right, my friends. To God be the honor. To God be the glory. To God be the praise. Thank you so much for watching. Send these videos out, especially this math stuff, because it really, really strengthens your faith that there is a God who put all this together and put it all in his book for us to read. Okay, God bless. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Wait! Where is the bonus?
All right then. I got a bonus. I'll find you a bonus. Hold on. You know, in the New Testament, which is the Gospels, the first 4 books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, God uses numbers occasionally in those first 4 books. And I want to look at what are all the numbers that he does use in those 4 books. Okay, well, here's a verse in Luke 7:41. It says, there were 2 debtors to a certain creditor. The one owed 500 denarii and the other 50. Well, there's 4 numbers in that verse. 1, 2, 50, and 500. So we'll just keep track of all the numbers that are mentioned in the in the Gospels. In John 2:6, it says there were 6 stone water pots standing there, according to the purification of the Jews, having space for 2 or 3 metratae. Okay, and by the way, this is the wedding of Cana. All right, and here they have the number 6, and it says there's also the number 2 and the number 3. Some of you might write to me and say, you know what? It says there are 6 stone water pots that held 20 or 30 gallons each. No, 20 gallons, 20 is not there. 20 is an English translation, and it's the equivalent of 2 metratae, whatever metratae are. But we're going to look at the numbers that are actually in the Greek, not any English conversion of 2 metratae is 20 gallons. There is no 20 mentioned in this verse. So save your writing to me about it. Thank you. Mark 2:3, and they came bringing to him a paralytic carried by 4 men. So the number 4 is in there. And he broke 5 loaves. Remember, Jesus fed the 5,000. Oh, 5,000. Well, there you go in Mark 8:19. You got 5 and 5,000. And in Mark 8:20, he does this again, and he breaks 7 loaves and feeds 4,000. So there's 2 more numbers we got, 7 and 4,000. Luke 1:59. And when 8 days to circumcise him were fulfilled, okay, this is Yeshua gets circumcised on day 8. 8 is in the Bible, in the Gospels. And Jesus healed the lepers in Luke 17:17, and he healed 10 of them, and 1 came back to thank him, and Jesus said, "Where are the other 9?" So I got 9 and 10 are in the Gospels. 11 disciples went into Galilee to the mountain where Yeshua assigned them in Matthew 28:16. In all, there were 14 generations from Abraham to David, from David to the exile in Babylon, and from the exile to Christ. This is shown in Matthew 1:17. So we have 14 shows up. It says Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 15 stadia away. So John 11:18. 15 is in the Gospels. 18 is in the Gospels, found in Luke 13:16. A daughter of Abraham, whom Satan had bound for 18 years, was healed on the Sabbath. John 6:19, we got 2 nice ones here. Therefore, having rowed about 25 or 30 stadia, they see Jesus walking on the sea, coming near their boat, and they were frightened. So 25 and 30 show up in the Gospels. There was a certain man there, himself being 38 years in infirmity. John 5:5, 38 is in there. And having fasted 40 days and 40 nights. This is Yeshua in the wilderness, Matthew 4:2. Therefore the Jews said, this temple was built in 46 years, and you will raise it up in 3 days. John 2:20. So we got 46. On that same day, 2 of them were going to a village whose name is Emmaus, 60 stadia from Jerusalem. So 60's in the Gospels. We talked about this one earlier. Jesus said to him, I say to you not 7 times, but 70 times 7 in Matthew 18:22. And the 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us through your name. Luke 10:17. Luke 16:7. Then they said to one another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 cores of wheat. He says to them, take your bill and write 80. So we have 100 and we have 80 showing up. And she was a widow to the age of 84. She never left the temple but worshiped night and day, fasting and praying. Luke 2:37 gives us 84. Matthew 18:12. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them have gone astray, will he not leave the 99 on the mountain, and having gone, seek the one going astray? 99 is used. Matthew 18:12. John 21:11. Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. 153 fish. That's that one. We should do a whole talk on that, because everybody wants to know, why was there 153 fish? Why did he make a specific? I mean, just a whole net full come in. You know, and so many people don't know why there was 153. And I happen to be one of them. Okay, John 6:7. Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of loaves are not sufficient. So there's 200 is shown. Remember John 12:5, Judas says, why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? So we have 300 shows up. And he allowed them, and unclean spirits having gone out, entered to the pigs and the herd. About 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea. Jesus removes the demon from the demon-possessed man and sends the demons into a herd of swine in Mark 5:13, and 2,000 is shown up. And in Luke 14:31, it says, what king, when he sets out to meet another king in battle, will not first sit down and consider whether he is strong enough with 10,000 men to encounter the one coming against him with 20,000? So 10,000 and 20,000. So these are all the numbers that are used in the Gospels, and it turns out that there are 37 unique numbers in the four Gospels. Again, 3 and 7. It even ties into things in the New Testament. How neat is that? Okay, are you happy with that bonus? Good. God bless. See you soon again. Bye-bye.
We want another bonus!
Another bonus? Are you kidding? All right. Here it is. I've shown you this chart on previous videos. It's very cool. These are all the combinations of Genesis 1:1 words that if you put them together, they are divisible by 37. Okay, the word haaretz alone, that's 296. That's 8 times 37. The word va'et is 407. That word alone is 11 times 37. And you can look at all the different combinations, and they go all the way down to the final row, which is all 7 words added together, is 73 times 37. Okay? And we've shown you that in all of these combinations, the word Bereshit shows up 12 times. And bara shows up 12 times. Elohim is 12 times. Et is 12 times. Hashemayim is used 12 times. Va'et is used 12 times. And haaretz is used 12 times. There's definitely some order going on there. So here's all 23 combinations of Genesis 1:1 words that are divisible by 37 and used each 12 times. Okay, some of these are repeated. Okay, you've got 37 times 27 twice. 37 times 35 shows up twice. 37 times 38 and 37 times 46. I'm looking at just these four that show up twice. Okay? Well, 37 times 27 is 999. 37 times 35 is 1295. 37 times 38 is 1406. And 37 times 46 is 1702. And the ones that show up twice, their totals add up to 5402, which is 2701 plus 2701. That's kind of cool. No, it's very cool. Okay, now let's take all of these combinations and let's take out each of the duplicates. Because as we just showed, four of them are duplicates. Okay? And let's combine them now. Now instead of 23 combinations, there would be 19 combinations? Yeah. So here are all the 19 combinations, and I took out the ones that doubled. And when you do that, here are all their values. If we add up all of their values of the 19 that aren't duplicated, you get 27,010. Which is 37 times 730, or 73 times 370. Unbelievable. And if you take just the third and the seventh combination, the third adds up to 481, the seventh adds up to 999, those two add up to 1480. 1480 is the value of Christos in Greek. And if you take the sixth one, this is a 37 times 24, it adds up to 888. 888 is Iousos, Jesus, in the Greek. Very nice. Iousos Christos, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. All right, there's your second bonus. Again, God bless. See you soon. And this one for real. Bye-bye.